We are proud to introduce you to the Forgotten Flyway, bringing respect to the Atlantic Flyway name.
All right, cool. Well, we are back, and we have our first guest on the Forgotten Flyway. Brendan, I'm going to let you take this away. You've known Doug for quite some time, and you're going to do the intro here.
Yeah, so today, our first guest on the Forgotten Flyway podcast is Doug Hartman. I've known Doug for about 14 years now, and he goes back to my earliest days of field goose hunting. I went on my first goose hunt ever with two guys named John Heidler and Mike Haggerty. Outside of that, maybe a time or two, pretty much the majority of the field goose hunting I've done has been with Doug. From learning how to call at geese, learning how to set decoy rigs in fields, I pretty much learned the majority of what I know and how I got started from Doug. So it's nice to have you on, man. Thanks for joining us.
I think you're giving me a little bit too much credit there, but Brendan was a young guy. It was funny how I met Brendan was I actually met one of his neighbors, and one of his neighbors kind of met him, and I was like, hey man, this guy was all about goose hunting, and I introduced him to a couple people, and then I started getting a call from Brendan going, that guy doesn't know what he's doing. I know what I'm doing. These guys live like a block away from each other. Super competitive of who was going to be the better goose caller, goose hunter. And I was like, guys, yeah, listen, settle down.
Yeah.
Let's all just hunt together. Let's have a good time. But yeah, Brendan, he just dove into it and just was hungry, like right from the start, like anything. It was just all about goose hunting, waterfowl hunting all the time. And it's still that way. And now he's doing way more than I do. He's out guiding over different states and doing podcasts and having me on as a guest, So, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty awesome to see.
So how old were you, Brendan?
I was in 8th grade going into my freshman year of high school. So I was young.
So you had all the testosterone. You had everything going.
Dude, I had a chip on my shoulder. I still am fairly competitive. But back then I was extremely competitive, and I through a guy named Dave Ryan that owns a local call company, kind of got tied up with doing some contest calling, and through that and my neighbor got connected with Doug, and I wanted to learn more. I could blow a duck call half decent, but on a goose call I was really struggling. So I would pest Doug all the time, trying to get him to pick me up and take me out to go just call at geese. That's what I wanted to go do, is see if I could get geese to turn to my calling. That's all I wanted. And it definitely snowballed from there.
One of my favorite stories about Brendan, so his neighbor, so how I met his neighbor, my cousin was dating his neighbor's older brother. And they were over, and they were like, man, you seem like you're really into waterfowl. And I'm like, yeah, a little bit. And they were like, my little brother's really into it. I'm like, well, give me his number. I'll take him out and show him. Let's have a good time. So this guy was very ambitious, and he was sending me all this stuff, and I hooked him up with this guy Dave Ron that Brendan mentioned, and he said, he's sending me all these pictures and stuff, right? So, and in the meantime, I met Brendan, and then I started getting texts from Brendan and going, listen, those pictures he's sending you, they're not real. They're off Google. And I'm like, what? So Brendan's like calling this dude out. Like, he's like, no, I'm going to hunt with you. This guy's not going to hunt with you. He's not going to meet these guys. So he was just competitive and ready to go right, like before I even really knew him, and he ended up, he wasn't lying, and it was true.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Doug, how'd you get into it? Like, what's your whole backstory? And And obviously, if Brendan's trying to get lessons from you for blowing any type of call,
So,
you had to be pretty good at it.
well, I started out, my first year goose hunting was 95 or 96, somewhere right around there. Very good friend of mine I went to high school with. I was the best man at his wedding. He was the best man of mine. That Dave Shaver and his father-in-law, Steve Swigert. They were like, hey, man, you got to come out duck hunting with us. So we go out on the Susquehanna River. It's cold as hell. Put the decoys out. We shot one mallard. First light, that's all we shot. I'm like, not impressed.
Checks out.
I'm like, yeah, I'm like, all right. And they were like, you got to go again. So I went again that year. And same thing. It was like the first hour light. Saw like 4 mallards. We shot 2. Wasn't impressed. Next year, they're like, one more time, you got to come out. You love hunting, you got to come out. So I go out, and they take me to this field we're goose hunting. And I don't know, we had like a 3-pack come in. And this guy had his chocolate lab with him and shot up. I sat up, shot my first goose, sailed because it was too high. Probably sky busted it. And it sailed, and his dog went and got it. And when that dog went out and got that goose, that was it. That's pretty much all I've ever hunted since that day. Like, just seeing a dog work. And so then it was just, I worked 3 to 11 for the next 10 years. So I could hunt every morning. And I was out every day. Then I met a guy by the name of Jim Gallagher. I met him through my sister, who was a waitress at a little diner. And she told the guy, she was like, all my brother can talk about is waterfowl hunting. And I'm like, she calls me up. She's like, this guy does guided hunts. So I go out with this guy, and he could tell I was just all about it. Just want to talk about it. And he took me out, and for a couple of years, I hunted with that guy, and that's when it really, like, it was every day. Like, from September to the end of February. Well, actually, then it was mid-January, and we were just hunting all the time. And then we went from there to, I met a guy named Sam Palumbo at Waterfowl Banquet. And he was a rep for Southern Game Calls. And I won a Shawn Mann shorty on a silent auction, but he wanted it. I outbid him. Well, me being a little naive, he was like, yo, I'll trade you this Southern Game Call for that shorty. And I was like, is that the one I saw you in the calling competition at the Sportsman Show in Harrisburg? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I'll trade you. And he was like, well, give me a shorty now, and then I'll meet you in a couple of days. I'm like, no, I don't know you. I'm not just going to hand you my call. And he was like, well, come to my house. I said, all right. So I went to his house. He gave me a couple pointers. I'm going to say it's probably about 97. And then he says, yeah, man. He's like, you got to come over. And let's hunt together. So I hunted with him one time. And the day I hunted with him, he was like, you got to come help me out with my booth down at the Sportsman Show for Southern Game Calls. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then 6 months go by, I don't hear nothing from him. It's the first day of the Sportsman Show. I go in, I park, I pay to park, I go in, pay to get in. I walk right over his booth. I was like, thought you needed some help. He goes, come on. Next time I was behind the booth, and that Sam is now my hunting partner. We hunt all over the place. Great guy, introduced me. He's been in the industry forever. Introduced me to all kind of people, and I was learning how to call from Jimmy Gallagher, and then when I met Sam, he was more into the competition calling. And he kind of got me started with that. And then getting into the competition calling, when you meet those people, You get to know them. You realize like you're almost like at the beginning, you're like, wow, this is so and so, and they're calling. And then you get behind that curtain, you're sitting there, and you realize they're just hunters.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And and you get to know them guys. You start going around to different shows, and you're like, man, this is awesome. Like I'm hanging out with these guys, but you learn so much from them.
Yeah.
And you realize that there's no secret sauce to killing ducks or geese. It's you go out there with your buddies and you just hope for the best day. You know what I mean? Like, you can set your decoys perfect. Like we've all had those days where you set your decoys perfect. You can have the best callers, and just some days they don't come in. And those guys, you realize it's about the relationships you make versus,
No doubt.
Like Brendan, 14 years. My buddy Sam, like I said, we started hunting together in 2000. We're best friends now. So, but I've hunted all over the place. Not as much as Brendan, though. I told him the other day, I said,
you've still done a lot. Don't hold back. You've still done a lot.
I'm sitting there. Kristen's getting ready to learn this. He got kids now. Like you just don't just get up at the drop of a hat. You're like, yeah, I really want to go there with you, but I got to go to the winter violin session at the school.
It was soccer for you for a long time. Yeah, I remember a lot of invites going out to you, and it's just, hey, I got soccer. Give me a couple years and I'll be there. So, and now we're approaching those years, and you're definitely starting to get out a lot more than the years past.
Yeah, I'm getting there, but it's still not.
Well,
one of the big transitions. You
got into a good situation there on the river, so there's obviously going to be a little bit of a learning curve trying to figure out that area. But it seemed like you were fairly successful for your first season in that particular spot. Got out a fair amount. You got to do a little bit of dog work. We'll get into that a little bit later. Yeah. We had a really fun day on Thanksgiving together.
Oh yeah.
It was a sloppy mess, but we got to do some really good, solid dog work, and that made the day.
The one thing though, and I've told Brendan this 100 times, Christian, is that when I started, I kind of hit it right where I got into it before it got real popular.
Yeah.
Tailgate pictures and Facebook, look at me. And I remember when Brendan was getting a little older and he was hunting some different people, they started saying about hunting the X. I'm like, what's the X? I didn't even know what they were talking about. And they were like, where the birds are gone. I'm like, well, don't do that. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, we would always position ourselves. Here's the roost. Here, we just called it what the field they were going. We didn't call it the X.
The feed.
And we just get in between, and we would traffic them all day because they weren't pressured as hard like they are now.
Yeah.
And maybe toward the last day or last 3 or 4 days of the season, then we would go where they were going. But our thing was, we never shot the roost and we never shot the feed. Because if you did that, they'd go away.
Yeah.
But then now the pressure is, here's the roost, here's the feed. You don't know how many people are going to be in between. So the area that I used to hunt, where Brendan still goes down, I don't even like going down there anymore because we would go down there for days on end and not see anybody else, maybe one other group. Now you go down there, if you're not in the field, if you don't have a lease and you just have permission, if you're not down there at 3 o'clock in the morning, someone's beating you at the field.
Yep.
And my buddy Sam that I hunt with all the time, he used to say it when I was younger, and now I understand it. He always said, I'm just not that angry at him anymore. Like, I don't need to be in the field at 3 o'clock to stack them up.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I mean, relatively speaking, I had some other stuff keeping me real busy when I was, basically 15 to 24, specifically during the fall. But
I don't know what that could have been.
yeah, no, I was busy. So I got out very few and far between when it came to waterfowl hunting. I'd deer hunt every once in a while because it was just a little easier. But when you're talking about the difference between when you first got into it and the tailgate pictures and all that stuff, like, do you really credit a lot of that pressure to like social media? I've heard that conversation come up a bunch.
Yeah.
I listened to Chad Belding's conversations and like that old timer, like, I wasn't like I used to, but like, I'm kind of an old soul and I've watched it. I see it. I'm down in Jersey and we don't have a ton of public land to begin with. So it's oftentimes really crowded, and private lands few and far between with that as well. So it's like, you really do have to kind of be mad at them and be ready to go to war from that side. And to your point, I mean, the maps, all that stuff, like it's really made it a lot easier for people to find those things that may have been well-kept secrets. Like they ain't secrets, man. Like you think you found something, everybody knows about it.
No, yeah.
We were just talking about that right around like 4:30 o'clock today, where there's no secret anymore. It's just a stone that you haven't turned over yet. Someone else has already been there.
Yeah, like I literally think the only limitation is what you have in your repertoire to get there. Like if you like mud motor, like what type of vehicle or not vehicle, but what means you have to get to a certain spot that maybe not everybody else has. Like that's your really only limiting factor.
Yeah. Well, and then the one thing that's really changed, I mean, I sound like the old guy, but where we used to hunt, at least around where I used to hunt, you knew the guy. There was no cell phones, right?
Yeah.
So there was a turkey hill that the guys that hunted the area, like you knew they were going to be there in the morning, and you kind of be like, "Hey, where are you guys thinking?" Well, a lot of birds moving over this area. I'm like, "All right, how many guys you got?" Oh, we got 2. Well, we only got 2. Let's get together. No sense fighting each other. It's not. As the years went on, it got less and less. It got more competitive. Guys wanted to be like, hey, look, this is my spread over here. And they just were the better waterfowl hunter. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. Like, it doesn't need to be that way, but okay. But it was, I probably had 6 to 10 years of this stretch of area where it gets super heavily hunted now. And we had like 3 groups of guys and we just slayed them every day. It was every day. And it was like, we had fields that it wasn't about when you were going to shoot your limit. You knew you were going to shoot your limit. It's just how long were you going to be in the field that day? Was it going to be 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock? And if it was a weather day, forget it. You were out there by 7:30.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it just switched, and you were like, "What's going on?" And then you realize, like, it's just the pressure.
Yeah.
It's that the geese just start getting pressured and pressured and pressured, and then that is when I started understanding what my buddy Sam said about not being that angry at him. I'm like, do I need to shoot a limit, or do I just need to go out with my closest friends? And if we have a couple groups come in and we shoot them, and if we don't, I got to the point as I got a little older where I was like, if I shot my limit, it didn't change my life none. Like, if I shot my limit that day when I went home, the wife was still telling me to take trash out. You know what I mean? Like that didn't change. Like, I wasn't a hero because I shot my limit that day. So, and that having kids and not being able to go as much. And then when I lost my 3 to 11 job and I started working daylight and I realized I could only hunt Saturdays, I really went through about 5 or 6 years. I didn't hunt a lot because it was like I went from being able to hunt the best weather days to only being able to hunt Saturdays, and it didn't matter what the weather was.
Yeah.
And I'd go out there and hunt bluebird days and be setting a rig up going, I know I ain't going to shoot nothing today. And then it was like, I don't even want to go. But then that went through, and then like, all right, now I want to go because I just want to hang out with my buddies and be away from the kids that are screaming and yelling, need a diaper change or whatever. And then, you know, so it was definitely just, you know, transition for me. And then I had snot-nosed little punks like Brendan going, hey, I can go every day. You know, I'm going after school. I'm like, yeah, I got to coach soccer practice tonight.
Yeah.
But the waterfowl thing has been a huge part of my life. I remember going to a calling competition at Cabela's. The wife's come along, got my first daughter in the stroller. And I'm like, it was just a family thing. They all, you know, and they're all used to it.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, I try to involve, I have 2 daughters and my wife. I was like, you guys got to come. And they always say they want to come because we always have dogs and they want to see the dogs work. What time do I got to get up? 4:30. No, we ain't coming. They ain't coming ever. Not once. Not once.
That's funny.
So, Doug's been fortunate enough to do a little bit of traveling. I know most recently you were in Texas. We're going to forego that because you've had a couple good Atlantic Flyway trips in the recent past, and also going back a couple of years. You've got a story or two about some coastal hunting that you've done in the Atlantic Flyway. So let's start out with most recent. You were just on a sea duck hunt. Let's hear a story about that.
Sea duck hunting?
Yep.
So my buddy Sam wanted to go sea duck hunting. And so little backstory. My buddy Sam has forever been going everywhere on different hunts and invites me all the time. And again, I'll go back, family obligations. And I'm like, want to go, can't go. But so over the sea duck hunt, he's like, you want to go? We went down there. Guy had an amazing boat. It was basically a 29-foot john boat with gunnels about up to your head. When you could sit down in a chair, had shelves in front of you. And we went down there. It was going to be a rough day. And the guy kept saying, hey, it's going to be a little rough. We're going to break the inlet. Let's go out, see what the ocean's doing. We're probably going to have 4 to 5 foot swells. Are you guys good with that? And I'm like, I am. And he was like, I'm going to ask you guys again. Are you good with that? I don't want to go out there and have someone get sick. And everyone's like, yeah, we're good. So we go out. And the guy lets the boat drift so we could feel the swells. He's like, is everyone good? I'm like, I'm good. Everyone's like, yeah, we're good. So we put the first string of decoys out. And he goes, hey, listen, guys, this is really rough. Are you sure you're good? Because we can pick this string up right now and we can go to the bay where there's no
So at that point, he's trying to tell y'all something.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so since I was a kid, my dad's taken me out on different fishing trips and stuff like that. I have never felt seasickness. So he's like, at one point, like I was sitting down and the rollers were going that like the boat went like here and then went here and I could see the sky. And I was like, nope, I need to stand up to make sure I can see above everything. So I stood up. I wasn't getting sick or anything. And he was like, when I stood up like that, he was like, Doug, you good? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And he was like, hey, guys, before we put the second string out, is everyone good? And I was like, oh, we're good. And my buddy Sam's like, we're good. We're good all day. So I'm helping the guy put the second string out. No sooner did we drop the anchor on the tail end of the second string, the captain goes, "Are you freaking kidding me?" And I turn over my shoulder, and my buddy Sam is just letting loose.
Let it go.
And I go, "Oh yeah, we're good." so, and he's like, so we slug in the 2 lines of freaking divers. We go up and we go over to the bay and put a couple strings out, shot a couple old squall. It was actually, the guy did a pretty good job for, it was more on us. If we just would have told him in the morning, hey, someone's going to get sick, let's go to the bay, we would have shot some scoters too. But shot old squalls that day. And then the next day he was like, I think the ocean's probably a better hunt, but after yesterday, we're going to the bay.
Yeah.
But we had a great time. Great time. So, but
that's one thing I've never done yet. There's a bunch of guys in Jersey that love it. I just, I don't know.
It is definitely a different type. It's so different type. Like, you're sitting there and you're like, at least where we were at, we didn't have any wind for the 2 days we were there.
Yeah.
But just the first day we had wind that kicked up the ocean, but where we went in the bay, we were protected from the wind. So the bay was really laid down. So the birds weren't really moving. So we'd sit there and we're like, oh, here comes an oyster boat.
Yeah.
Coming in. And then you see, here they come, and you sit there, and then there'd just be duck flying across, this high above the water. And you're watching it, and all of a sudden it just turns and comes in. And at least our shooting was a little farther than what we're used to doing. And what's really good about it is you can see on the water, you're 3 feet behind that. And you just sit there, someone starts shooting, and everyone, like, I just start laughing because you can see the splash of the shot behind. And then, it took a little bit, and then we got it. But it's a different type of duck hunting. Like, something you should definitely try. It's fun.
Yeah, if you've never done it
at
least one time, you definitely have to. We'll get out next year. It's good. I've got a buddy that runs an outfit in Maryland, Jimmy Eck, Quacksmackers Outdoors. We'll get out with Jimmy.
Jimmy's a good dude.
Yeah, great dude. I've known Jimmy pretty much just as long as Doug, and he's good people. He'll take care of us.
Yeah, dude, I love it. Anything, I'm game for anything with that. It's just like I said, it's hard when I'm getting out in the bay and I'm watching these guys do this, and I know what I'm potentially walking into in the marsh. Like, I'm like, I'd rather shoot black ducks or the occasional pintail or widgeon or something like that. But
so, Christian, here's a funny story for you. You want to talk about hunting the marsh? And Brendan probably knows it. It pops up every year. I was just going to bring it up. Facebook. We went down Sea Isle City, New Jersey, to hunt Brant. And I never experienced Tuttle Marsh. I hunted marsh before in blinds on like the edge of the marsh and stuff like that, but like I never walked through the marsh.
Yeah.
I found out, unfortunately, real quick, you can go up to your hips real fast.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you what, the Delaware Bay is bad. I got last year, shot a black duck. We moved around a little bit because of the tide. I shot a black duck. It landed up on this big mud flat. And I kind of knew what I was walking into, but I didn't have my dog that day because I had run him the day before and he was whipped. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And I'm happy I didn't, honestly, because I'd have been trying to pull a dog out of the mud was up to my hips, which is, whatever. I'm 6'4", 6'5", so it was nasty. I had to literally bear crawl out of this sucker. All fours, roll out of it. I basically needed a hose when I got to the truck to get in it. But, that stuff's no joke.
Because we're sitting there, right, and we're on the edge, and we have, I don't know, several thousand brant in a bundle over just sitting by the, and they ain't moving.
Yeah.
We got our decoys out, right? And the guy we're down there with, he, like, I've never done it. He was like, listen, he was like, we got to let the tide go out. We were at high tide. They were like, when the tide goes out, everything gets exposed. The brant are going to come over here to feed on what's exposed. And I'm like, and they were like, they'll start moving. We'll get a little wind. I'm like, all right. So we're sitting there, and the tide just starts going out. And there's all these black ducks. Now there's puddles in the marsh because the tide went out. And all these black ducks are piling up over there. So I say to this guy, Dave Ron, I'm like, Dave, let's go get them black ducks. He's like, you want to walk back there? I'm like, yeah, it's like 100 yards. They were like, it's through the marsh. I'm like, it's 100 yards. So I'm following Dave. So there's this big spot of mud that's got like 4 like little things like this, a grass through. And Dave weighs about 145, maybe 160 pounds soaking wet, right? So he's walking on these little clumps of grass. I'm slightly more than 165 pounds. And I think I'm going to walk on these clumps of grass. And I go out, the next thing, and I'm like, oh, I'm sinking. If I would have just laid down and just like, I learned my lesson. If I just laid down and just got out, I'd been fine. Yeah. But I start doing this within 30 seconds. I was up to my waist. Now Dave is on the edge of, he's on the edge of the good grass, and he don't stick his hand out to help me. He goes like this.
Yeah, taking a picture of you.
And I sit there, and he's like, you have to lay down. I'm like, I know. I would have done it a while ago if you didn't have your camera out.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, definitely, man. That was my first experience with the tidal marsh. I was in mud up to my waist. It took me about 25 minutes to get out of that. Yeah. It was.
Then
no one came to help. Everyone just came to laugh,
Yeah, then you're like, screw them black ducks. Let's go back and sit down and wait for this tide to get out a little more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Did you kill any brant?
So how about? Oh yeah. As soon as that tide went the whole way out, got the low tide. Those brant, we sat there and watched for hours. Got up, wind picked up a little bit. They come out. We were using, I don't know, we had probably about 20 V boards of real geese on their V boards, and they just came in, and we were done. And as soon as they started flying, we were done in 25 minutes. Shot her in like 25 minutes. It was pretty cool.
We're trying to get that brant salad down there, that little like leafy junk that sticks up. I call it, at least. That's funny.
We had a guy that day, he's like, you cook brant right, it will taste just like a crab cake. Said, no.
Nah. I don't know what kind of crab cakes he's been eating.
Yeah. He said it will taste just like a Maryland crab cake, and it just happened to be we were with some guys from the Eastern Shore of Maryland. He says, we're in Jersey. You guys don't know what a Maryland crab cake tastes like.
No, man. And my brant goes straight into my sausage pile. Straight into my sausage pile. After I probably brine them for a little bit too. But
so, Christian, you asked me earlier about how I got into waterfowl hunting. When you were young, your dad or relative?
So my grandfather, I talked with Brendan about this a little bit. My grandfather was pretty much like the ultimate outdoorsman. He's hunted from Dall sheep in Denali to stag in Ireland and pretty much everything in between. But my family's originally from like northeastern PA up in the coal regions. So he still lives up there. But maybe 20 years ago now, he bought a house. He had land always, like started in Chestertown and then kind of bouncing all over the Eastern Shore of Maryland. And he eventually migrated down south to the Eastern Shore of Virginia. So I grew up in South Central Virginia, and right when he bought that house, I was 8, 9. And that's where I first started duck hunting. I was 8 or 9. We duck hunt in the bay right there. His house is right on the Tidal River. We're oceanside on the peninsula. So I was, my first memories are like sitting on my Uncle John's offshore blind, glassing Brant for hours and, shooting a box and a half of shells at Bufflehead. And, and then like sports kind of took over. So it was just one of those things. Like if we got down in January, end of deer season, I'd be like, hey, let's go duck hunt type of thing. But I was never like nutty about it.
Yeah.
And then probably right when I got like my sophomore year in college, my freshman year in college, I had that long break because we didn't have that bowl. We didn't have a bowl game my freshman year. I didn't have much else to do. So I just started beating around with some of my buddies when I was back home. And then from that point on, I was pretty ate up by it. And then it just, once I had the time, it was over. I got a chocolate lab, had the time, and I was like, my wife hates it. And she's like, when's it over again? I'm like, well, we got that extended special. We got that extended goose season that runs through February. She's like, I thought it was done at the end of January. I'm like, nah, I'll still be trying to, maybe I'll try to sneak out for snow geese and then I'm going to get the boat in and it's fishing season. And she's like,
we get nice snow geese down there.
Yeah, we do actually. South Jersey's got a bunch, but my buddy's got a farm here that's pretty good. And then, dude, we were down on my trip. I do a trip with my buddies down to my grandpa's place in Virginia. We went the second week in January, dude. That whole peninsula was covered up in snow geese. Like I'm talking like tens of thousands of snow geese all over the place.
I may or may not have a rig if you ever need anyone to go.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. I was telling Brendan. Brendan says he hates it, but dude.
So when Brendan and I first started hunting together, I took him out. We did some canyon hunting. Not a lot. Took him out a couple times. And then I started taking him out snow goose hunting. And I was just getting into it. Because for me, it was something new. Like I did the cannon thing, the duck thing for a lot of years. And for me, I wanted to get into snow goose hunting. Not to see how many snows. Like, it's the best show on earth if you get them to do it right.
Yeah.
So, and I was just learning, and it was something new. And I took him out a couple times and didn't do good. And, and I ain't gonna lie, Brendan, I was like, yo, you're 15 or 16. Like, bring some of your boys along to put all these freaking decoys out. It's much easier. You guys don't get as tired. And then he actually got hooked up with someone. I forget the guy's name. He was helping a guy down around Mill Creek, and I'd call him. He'd be like, I hate it. He's like, we put all these decoys out. We have like one good day a week. And I was like, yeah. And then I got hooked up with a guy, Scotty Miller up. He used to be a partner at Finger Lakes Guide Service. And they had all these leases up in New York, right above the Finger Lakes. And they didn't hunt snow geese. So me and my buddy Sam could go up there and hunt snows. And we'd pay the guys a little bit extra to extend their lease and whatnot. But it was so different from what happens around here is the geese could get in the field and sit for 3 days and no one mess with them.
Yeah.
Out here, man,
dudes are crawling up on them. They're the whole nine. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy's got the cow cut out with plywood, like sneaking through, like, yeah. And then we go up there and we're like, wow, this is great. And we had that for a couple of years. But I don't think there's ever been a time I talked to Brendan about snow geese that he didn't go. Nah. Like yeah. But it's still my favorite.
Yeah.
More than anything, like, it's a lot of work. But when it happens and it's right, it's like a whiteout.
Yeah, it's tough to beat them. Yeah.
Yeah, we hunted them a couple times
in
Kansas this year, and I've refueled my hatred for them. I got a little taste of them this year, and we got our asses kicked a couple times. Our best day was like maybe 40 birds. Now without e-collars and stuff, it was regular season, so without all the tricks, it was a little bit rougher than conservation season, but my dog sure enjoys it. That's I'll keep going because we have opportunities to get pretty large numbers doing it, and Macy's getting high mileage, so I'm trying to get as many in as we can.
How old's Macy now, Brian?
She will be 11 next month.
So she was only a year younger than Zoe.
She'll be 10 or 11 next month. I'd have to look.
Okay.
But now that you say that, it might be 10 next month.
Minutes.
So Zoe, Doug's black lab that I actually got to grow up around, pretty much sparked my interest in well-trained gun dogs. I had a pointer. My dad trained him for upland. Excellent upland dog. Waterfowl. He would go get a duck if he saw it fall. He would bring it back and drop it as soon as he got out of the water, and that was pretty much the extent of his waterfowl hunting. In a dry field, he would try to drag a goose by the wing and wouldn't do much with it. He was a short hair, so I gave him an excuse for a long time, but out in Texas, a guy I worked with, Chris Pinnock, he had a short hair named Jax, who was maybe 2/3 of the size of my short hair, and that thing picked up geese and sandhill cranes like nobody's business. So the excuses are off the table for my old dog. He was just lazy and wanted to drag geese backwards. So my first couple goose hunting experiences, Zoe was along, and it was the first time I had ever really hunted over a steady dog, first of all, a dog that was steady to the shot. And first time I ever saw whistle handling, that was and hand signaling. That was really what sparked my interest. I didn't know that you could really do that much with dogs at that point. And then I started looking into it further, and it's eventually how I ended up with Macy.
And the funny thing is, you say that is, I got Zoe, and I had some dogs previous. And I didn't really know you could whistle train. I could whistle train. But this dog, from the time I got as a pup, was just, let's go. And everyone's like, how do you train this dog? And I'm like, I don't know if I really did. Like, I mean, I did my work with her, but it was so easy to do the work with her because Zoe just wanted to do it. Yeah. And she was 6 months old. I'm doing 100-yard blinds. I'm handling, and some of the guys I used to hang out with were big into doing like the master hunt test and the field trial or something. They were like, "You got a field trial dog," and I'd be like, "No, I got a hunting dog."
Yeah,
yeah, and they were like, "No, that dog." And I'm like, "I don't know," and they would tell me like things like when she was young, like, "Don't give her birds too early," like, you got to train. I'm like, "No, I don't care what your rules say over here with the field trial stuff." And I'm not taking away anything of those dogs, like the way those dogs handle and stuff like that, like the basics of training the field trial dogs, and you put that into a good field dog. But there is, in my opinion, there's a big difference of here's hunting, and then here's the guy out in the field throwing the bird up in the air, and the dog can see it. And one of the big things was that a guy, Mark Keller, that I hunted a lot with, we would have debates all the time. He was like, "Don't let your dog hunt like that." Because in the field trial thing, like, they want you to be in total control of your dog. And I was like, no, I want my dog to hunt.
Yeah.
And there was times by the time Zoe hit like 3 and I could handle her, if I was giving her a left cast, she would take it and stop and go the other way. And I'd whistle stop her. I'd be like, "No, over," because that's where I saw the bird go down. And I learned if I gave her a left cast and she would take it and stop and go the other way, the bird was the other way. And I'd be like, "All right, hunt it up."
Yeah.
Go over, get the bird, come back. I'm like, "All right." Like, yeah, she was just, and then the other thing is, the one thing that is really big on the field trial thing is what they call popping. if the dog's running out and is looking for a bird and stops and sits without you telling it, that's called popping, and you will get flagged in a field trial or a master hunt. So my buddy Mark, who was into that, he was like, that's popping it. I'm like, no. So at least for me and Zoe, our relationship for hunting was, if she stopped and sat without me telling her, I mean, she didn't know. She didn't know where to go. I'm like, no, it's over here. Go over there. And I thought that was awesome. Like, she's out there working hard. She's looking. She can't find nothing. She stops sitting. I'm like, no, it's over here. And she would go over there. And I don't know if I will. The dog I have now, Breezy, she is 10 months old. I don't know. She handles very good. I don't know if she quite has the same hunt desire as Zoe. Yeah. I don't know if I'll ever have another dog like that. That dog was awesome. And Brendan will tell you, like, there was never a time if we dropped birds, like, people were like, we got to go look for that bird. I'm like, no, Zoe got him.
Yep.
Like, after a year, it was like, she was her second year and a half old, 400 yards, 500. It didn't matter. Like, she saw it, and it was. She was pretty awesome dog.
So the first limited geese I ever shot was with Doug and my dad and Zoe, and at the end of the hunt, we still had birds trying to get in. So we were just trying to count out limits, make sure that we had our 15 birds, and get out of there. We weren't worried about a picture. We weren't worried about anything else except for making sure we had enough birds, getting the layout blinds, and getting the hell out of the field. So there's a pile of 5. All right, counting. Here's the second pile of 5. Okay, throwing 5 more into another pile, making sure we got it. Up pops a bird still alive out of the first pile, and this thing takes off. It's running, and there's probably about 500-600 yards between the layout blinds and where we park the trucks, and this bird starts flying 4 feet off the ground, about halfway in between the layout blinds and the trucks. Zoe sees it, and without any command, takes off after the bird, and we're all just sitting there watching the race happen. The bird starts to coast. It's losing a little bit of altitude, and it's maybe 18 inches, 24 inches off the ground, and Zoe grabs it right on the ass and brings it straight back to us. Rang the bird's neck, put it back in the pile, got out of the field.
My favorite Zoe story was I was down hunting with my buddy Sam, and we were down Dillsburg, Pennsylvania. We're up on the top of this hill, and it was cut corn, and then went to wheat, to another cut corn, down to the bottom, and it was kind of like a little marshy, and then went up to wheat and more corn. We're sitting there, and we had shot about 12, 13 birds or whatever, and I'm sitting there looking out, and it's probably, I don't know how far it was. It was far. And I said to my buddy Sam, I'm like, is that a dead bird laying up there on that wheat? My buddy Sam gets the knocks out. He's like, yeah, that's a dead bird. And I'm like, hey, you mind if I try to get Zoe on that? And he's like, dude, we're going to have to get the truck to that. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, if we could see it, she could see it. Not to take any thunder away from Zoe because it was a great retrieve. But the one thing that freaking happened is I sent her, and she would take a line great. She took a line, and she got out there pretty far, stopped. And I gave her a back cast, and she stopped. I gave her another back cast. Well, it just happened to be down that bottom part where the marsh was. There was a white trash bag, or a white, like, grocery bag. And she saw that thinking it was a bumper. And she went down to that. And that got her out way far than what she normally would have went. And now she's only 75 yards away from this goose. And she goes over the bag and she stops and turns around. And, like, she's not to the point where she can really see. Like, she can see me, but I'm in camouflage, so
Yeah.
if I go back, she can't really see that. So I hit the whistle and I scream at the top of my lungs, back, and I walk over to the right, and she turns over her right shoulder. And as soon as she turned, I knew her body language. Like, she turned and she saw it. And I was like, I can't believe she got that. And my buddy Sam still talks about it every tree. If it wasn't for that white little grocery bag in the weeds down there, like, she would never went that far. But that's still like, I mean, I'm telling you, it was probably 800 yards. Like, it was far.
That's unbelievable.
And it was unbelievable.
I think the best way to describe dogs like that, because like my dog, I had sent him away. I wanted my next one. He's going to be 8 actually in February, and he's good, man. But he's got that gamer where it's like doesn't do everything perfect, does some things really good, but like he loves to hunt.
Yeah.
And most of the time, to your point, I've had similar things where like I'm trying to cast him one way or the other, and then he ends up going the other way, and then I just kind of throw my hands up, and next thing you know, he comes up out of the buck brush with a wood duck in his mouth, and I'm like, guess he knew where it was and I didn't, you know what I mean? But I think like the best way to describe that type of dog is like they're gamers. Like I'd rather have a dog that's going to help me harvest all of my ducks or geese that I shot that day than a dog that's going to go out and like slam a hunt test. And I agree. Like same thing. I got buddies that run the hunt tests. It's like, they're awesome dogs. It's super cool. Ton of power. I think it's just different though. Like I'm much more of the mindset where like, I want a dog that in real life situations can read, react, has a good foundation.
Yeah.
That's super cool, man.
And that was kind of like way back when we first started talking. You asked me how I got into it.
Yeah.
That day when I watched that dude's dog go out and get my first goose I shot, within part of the story I left out, within a month, I had gone. Now, I didn't know anything about it. I opened up the newspaper. Oh, here's a lab for $195. I'm on the, but I had a chocolate lab. Like immediately, that was my thing. And even now, like, I'm not a big pheasant hunter, but if you say, "Hey, Doug, you want to get pheasant? Can I bring my dog?" Yeah, all right, we're going. Like, 2 weekends ago, I had the guys that I was out in Texas with on our crane hunt. They called me up. They live around there. They're like, "Hey, you want to go hunting this Saturday?" I'm like, well, what's going on? We got birds, whatever. And they're like, "Yeah, we got some birds." I'm like, "Can I bring my dog?" Well, I'm bringing my dog, and yeah, he's probably not good with another dog, so no, you can't bring your dog. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go shoot pigeons, see if I can get some feathers under my pup." You know, like I would just much rather do that. I would rather spend the day with my dog because, you know, my dog always likes me no matter what I do, you know, so.
That's awesome.
But yeah, and then Brendan, I don't know if you would have gotten into hunting with the dog if it wasn't for Zoe back in the day. Like, because I remember, like, he was like super impressed. He was like, "Wow," and I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, I definitely. I don't think I would have had much
to do with the dog. It was all me.
It's like, "Hey man, I really want to see that dog pick up some more geese. Could you maybe take me hunting again?"
Yeah. I had so many people. Well, what'd you do with that dog? Man, I spent so much time. That dog inspired me for the training because no matter, like, we would do this and just pick it up right away. And we're like, all right, well, let's go to the next thing. Yeah. Let's go to the next thing. All right. And then, so one of my another favorite story about Zoe was, I can't remember what game it was, but my wife and I, we had a motorhome. We go up to the Penn State games. And it got to the point I did not want to ever do anything without my dog. To the point that it probably pissed my wife off a little bit. But I'm like, the dog's coming along. So my thing was, that dog listening, I could walk through 150,000 people outside of Beaver Stadium. If I put a white bumper in my back pocket, that dog would just sit there. bouncing up in my back pocket. And we walked the whole way in. So if you go past Beaver Stadium, in between Beaver Stadium and the Bryce Jordan, and go into the Shields building right there, which is the administration building, right in front of there is a bench that my family paid. My mom passed away. 2011? 2011. And my family paid to have a memorial bench put in front of the Shields building. So whenever we go up to tailgate, part of our day is we go over and sit on the bench and get pictures. And we took the dog up, and she was like, "You want to take the dog with us?" Walking through the crowd, I said, "Yeah, I'll put that white bumper in my back pocket." Everyone's like, "Oh, I want to pet your dog." Zoe was like, "No."
Yeah.
And I'd be like, "Here, you want to play with her? Here's the bumper." And they throw it, she get it, and bring it back. But we walked in, got her pictures, and came back. Yeah, it was pretty odd. I was like, I never thought I'd have a dog that could walk around.
Yeah.
Thousand people. And I don't think she saw anyone but my white bumper in my back pocket. That's the only thing she saw all day. That's all she cared about.
Yeah, her
stuff, man.
She had a habit of finding bumpers anywhere you would hide them. Doug liked to maybe throw a bumper or two for a dog before a hunt, get the pregame jitters out, and Zoe had a way of finding. You could zip it up in a backpack, and she'd still somehow find a way to end up with that bumper by the end of the hunt. It'd be like, "Oh,
I got worried when she,
I haven't seen Zoe with a stalk of corn in a while. Oh, there she is with her bumper."
I got worried when she was a pup that I literally stopped taking bumpers out because it was like she would prefer a bumper over a burr. And I was like, no, this can't happen.
Yeah.
But and then in time she matured and that.
Well, how deep are we into this? What are we at time-wise here?
About an hour.
Think we should wrap it up?
Something like that.
Think we should wrap it up here?
Yeah. I think we got to get in a goose blind here together.
Yeah, listen,
shortly.
My favorite thing about a goose blind is sitting in with my best friends telling lies. That's what we always say.
And Doug's got
and having. Oh, I can tell lies all day.
Shit.
But that,
let's go shoot one goose and tell some stories.
I will say though, kind of wrap this up though, like to see, like Brendan and I, we don't do a ton of stuff together, but we always stay in contact. I'll hit him up. I'll text him, "Hey man, I got some geese in a field. You want to go?" No, I'm in Arkansas shooting ducks and flooded timber. Yeah, I hate you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, he's done his thing though. That's good. I like it.
Yeah, he's doing great. I don't know him as long as I've known you, but this has been fun. This is a cool little project, and got some other stuff cooking that we'll keep some people posted with potentially. I don't want to jinx it yet, but
because he friggin' he sent me a picture of Scott, his dad, and you and the blonde that day, and he was like, "Yo, where you at?" And I was like, "Yo, man, you told me I was gonna go with you guys, right?" He was like, "I was texting you." So here's a funny story. My phone ended up in a fire pit, and we couldn't find it. And then we found it, and it was freaking towards
I texted
over
this
the
guy
10 days. And I was
5 times to come out on this goose hunt.
And I was like, "Why'd you get a hold of me?" He's like, "I tried." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that was when my phone ended up in a fire pit."
I'm a little curious how your phone ended up in the fire pit.
It's island stuff.
That's island stuff.
Yeah, that's island stories.
There was no alcohol involved, I promise.
I didn't think there would be. Not one drop. That's awesome. Well, listen, we'll make that happen for sure. We'll get out. And Doug, I appreciate you. I appreciate you hopping on. And Brendan, I appreciate you setting this up. This is good stuff, man.
Yeah. Thanks for telling some stories, Doug. We'll definitely have you on again here in the coming months.
Cool. Let's do it.
Yeah,
All
we'll
right.
do something. We'll do something after a hunt, with a hunt, something like that. But
Yep.
with that being said, appreciate you guys tuning in. This is another episode of the Forgotten Flyway. And we'll be back probably next week. We'll might hit the Great American Outdoor Show for a little bit with Tyler Coleman.
Oh, yeah.
I got to still see if I can swing that. May do a trip up to State College for some work stuff, but yeah, we'll be back.
All right. Sounds great.
All right, cool. Let me stop this thing from recording.